Hey YouTubers, and hey INTPs. So I've been getting more into Myers-Briggs recently and getting more in touch into what being an INTP means. Gone into the cognitive functions, TI, NE, SIFE, and the shadow functions. Um, and also been watching a lot of YouTube videos just to see how other INTPs act, what problems they have, and we have a lot of the same problems. And sometimes it's just really nice to listen to others who have similar problems, and it's like, yeah, that's me. Like, I'm so happy I'm not the only one who's like this, and this makes total sense. This is why in social situations I get really tired, or I understand things but I don't care, or procrastinate a lot, or I feel like I'm the most intelligent person in the world. So this video, I've noticed that like it kind of stops there a lot of the time. Like you'll find someone who's a little deeper in the theory and they'll explain it a little better. Um, but a lot of it just seems to be kind of fixed mentality things. Like this is how I am, and no one, not a lot of people tell you how to deal with it. Um, there are talks about maturity and things like a TI-SI loop, or like you're lacking maturity in this function, so you should work on it. There's just a lot of controversy, and therefore, even as I'm going through all this theory, I hesitate to go too deep into it sometimes because I don't want it to get stuck in my head like, oh, this is how I am. No matter how much I work on this, it's always gonna be like this. So I found this resource on Tumblr that I really liked. There's actually a ton of great links here. This is just one of them specifically for INTPs because if I went through all of them, it would take forever. And I'm still trying to understand all the other personality types. I find it easier if I meet one and I'm like, oh, that's why we get along, or oh, that's why I don't like you. Um, but I found that this was important because this was a nice source that had a ton of information. It's actually based on I think one of Jung's books, or a lot of these links are just related to some of the books out there, and therefore they're kind of long. If I scroll through this, it's actually this one isn't that long, but some of them get really long. So I'm just gonna go over this how this webpage and another webpage goes over INTP developments, just so you're more aware of it. I feel like resources like this might cut down your development time by quite a few years, or maybe you'll get to a place that you wouldn't have gone to before. So I'm in my late 20s, so I'm not like super old yet, but I know a lot of like younger INTP videos out there. I watch them and they seem to be at the starting stages, or some of them are really insightful. But like you can just see yourself like if you just potentially have all these problems and or fix them, you can get to 40 or 50 or 60 and you'll be like, oh man, I'm INTP, I'm always an INTP and this is my problem. So I'm just gonna get into it. A lot of it is gonna be me just reading what's on the web pages. So if you don't want to hear my voice, the links are gonna be in the video description, so you can look at yourself, and I highly recommend it that you do. But let's just get into it. So this one goes into the INTP strengths and their preferences, and it goes over 7 levels of maturity. There's one of these for all the personality types, and this is a more in-depth version of your development from this larger guide on just your developments. There is a link on ego development, which goes into um, a lot of your life. You work on building up your identity, and that's like the halfway points. So let's say that's your TI developments. After that, you have to learn how to you have to figure out how to kill your ego in order to actually get even better. And it's really scary to just let go of your identity like that, but that's kind of where I am right now, where I feel like I have to let go of some of my identity to improve. And in the long run, at least these past few days, I've realized that I should take more value into some of the other cognitive functions, and even all 8, not just the 4, even if um, the other 4 are more subconscious, because I've just heard a lot of different things about the shadow functions, and I'm trying to take the most optimistic view on them. Some people think you shouldn't develop them at all. Some people say they're really weak. Some of them say that you're like really strong, like your uh, TI, your shadow function is TE, and NI is your shadow function for NE. And some people say those are actually really strong. It's just they're not your preferences. So if they're there, then that means it's great. Like as far as developing them, they're already probably quite well developed. It might take more energy or more conscious efforts, um, but they're probably already there. Versus like feelings, to some extent, like I've been kind of iffy on feelings, like how good I am at them. In the end, like being able to accept the different like personalities of myself and be able to switch on the switches on these um, cognitive functions, I feel like that's the direction I'm going to. It's still a work in progress, but I like it more than just a static uh, Myers-Briggs theory, and that's how I see myself as I get deeper into this. Like when I first learned about INTPs, I just looked at the four letters, and I looked at them one by one and never went deeper. And I was like, all right, sure, I'm introverted, intuitive, I think a lot, and I'm more a perceiver than a judger, and I never went deeper in that. There's limited value in that, like you could label yourself, but I'm trying not to go too far into labeling, if that makes any sense. All right, so now I'll actually start looking at what's on this site. So our core values, these aren't be too surprising, but it's nice to have just a source that puts us all in one place. So intelligence, logic, and truth. So a lot of that's related to our TI, not a big surprise. Strengths, broad perspective, innovative problem solver. I would say that goes into your TI and NE, especially this broad perspective and innovative. Um, ties more into NE. And then weaknesses, a lot of you probably gone through this. Detached, overly absorbed in thought, procrastinates. Sometimes like we see these as problems, especially procrastination, and sometimes we see these as good. Like overly absorbed in thought. Well, it can be really beneficial sometimes if you're absorbed in thought because then you can think really deeply and think things out. Detached is probably when you don't want to deal with your emotions or you see your emotions as meddlesome, so you try to push them away. I know a lot of INTPs do that, maybe several times a week, several times a day. Shadow conflicts. So some of these are like your inferior function, like your FE issues, and like your TE and your FI are your shadow functions. So TE is seen as hasty. So I've heard from some sources that you're actually pretty good at TE, which is your efficiency in planning out in a logical structure. And yeah, like whenever I tried to work on TE yesterday because I tried to pull out at least a little bit of my cognitive functions yesterday, and yeah, TE was hard. Like I wanted to make a plan, and I was like, oh, but there could be all these things that get in the way, and I don't want to just put down some steps and not follow them. So I think yesterday my plan was okay. I need to figure out a certain direction, and I need to just like decide on something. Like I need to use my NI to zoom more into my intuition and figure out some direction I want to go into, and I want to use my TE to actually implement a plan for that. So that was me exercising that. Yesterday it was, I think, to make a YouTube video on coding algorithms since I'm a software developer, and coding algorithms help in general for like future interview stuff. But like that's not a very detailed list. It's like make a YouTube video on this. Um, but I was happy I at least took the effort to activate my TE more. I know that everyone doesn't. So yeah, I can see TE as you don't make plans because they can change, and but if you never make plans, it's like plans are useful for other people. If you look at the other personality types, especially J's like ENTJ and INTJ, they're generally more productive, and it's like I feel like most INTPs they would like we're defined a lot about what we don't like. So we don't like some of the things like we see those things as maybe rigid or too close minded. But if you're able to just activate them at certain times, like you'll be more balanced all the time. Like I'm trying to turn off my TI more often, like especially when I'm not like by my computer or something. I'm just walking. I've been recently trying to activate my SC more, and I'm not completely like the typical INTP. Like I started playing some sports in high school, which I was never super good at, and not having a strong SE would explain that because my TI would always get in the way. But like I would just try to be in the moment. And in social situations right now, I'm trying to activate FE and SC at the same time. Um, and yeah, it helps sometimes, but I realize it's like a switch I have to turn on. And if I ever decide to turn off the switch because I hesitate, it's like it's really hard to turn back on. But that's I'm trying to just do all these weird intuitive models. Okay, so next is FE, is seen as intrusive, interfering, meddlesome, and desperate to be liked. Yes. So a lot of INTPs use emotions. Like I think we use emotions more logically, so we can kind of understand how other people act. Um, It also gets in the way because if you didn't feel certain ways like sadness, all these negative emotions, you could probably be more productive and have more fun in your thought experiments. You also see other people who are way too emotional, and you're just like, why are you acting this way? And you know that it's more human nature, and you just go out with all these logic cycles. The more information you accumulate, the more you learn about human nature, and you just see all these bad things with FE. FIs is your other shadow function, your eighth one. Seen as oversensitive, idealistic, avoiding reality, I could definitely see as an FI. I respect FE in terms of authenticity, and like you can just sense it from them, and they're based on principles, and it's like you don't have to think about it. It's like do the right thing, and it's hard to argue against it. But yeah, when I thought about FI, I know a lot of INTPs aren't super moral. Like we tend to have a good moral boundary for a lot of things, but we're willing to like push boundaries for morality just for thought experiments or whatnot. Because it's like it is like idealistic. It does avoid reality sometimes. Like sometimes you have to complicate your morals in order to do something or to experiment. I know a lot like INFPs like or FI dominant people might have a hard time doing this. So that's their problem. We have problems with TI. But yeah, I can see why I don't like to activate some of these. So process of ego development. Let's just go over the high level things. So power and control. This is where you're just starting to activate your TI normally. Social identification is where you're trying to figure out what group you belong into. Personal identity is where you're trying to figure yourself out, and you might not rely on a group as much, but like you kind of have your own little world, and you like your TI is probably a lot more activated at that point. Determined action is when you actually start trying to work on your other weaker points, and this is where like health starts to like growth starts to happen. I feel like a lot of the time because this is where you're like are more aware, and like you can see over here like FNS preferences are there or they start to be there. I'm gonna skip to this integration and authenticity. This is where I really want to get to because like when I learned about TI and NE, it was like, isn't that amazing? Like TI is really hard to explain, but NE is like your extrovertness. Like it's your second one. You can use this to be like really inspiring to people, and like one of the things I'm aiming for is to be a quick-witted guy. So like someone makes a comment and I just like say this smartest thing that's like, and I'll use my other functions so it's not like completely terrible, so I don't look like a complete jackass all the time. But that's where I want to get to right now. And then um, level 7 honestly is like the same for a lot of types. It's like your TI isn't like all that, and it's driven by ego, so your identity and yeah, your pride. So you have to be willing to let go of some of that in order to actually grow. Accepting differences, so yeah, you have to start to accept other types to some extent, so other perspectives, recognizing that not everyone wants to be inquisitive and logical, which is your TI, and then integrate all the four cognitive functions, and to some extent. So a lot of people don't really go into how to activate all this, and yeah, I see a lot of conflicting things of like, do I activate this? Do I just focus on my first four? Like some people say TI is going to be most natural, and if you're lucky, you'll start developing your NE in a healthy way, and an SI kind of goes along, and an FE like when you're older, you'll finally maybe start to get it. Um, but yeah, let's just go a little deeper into some of these. So in the worst case, you have distorted TI. Um, you kind of you're forgetful, you're impatient, you're blunt, which is something that someone who's logical could definitely do. And you're criticizing things, and you ignore things that seem illogical. Your NE, your ability to see a bunch of things, it'll show off as like arrogance, impracticality, eccentricity, rebelliousness, and yeah, like NE can totally go that way. A lot of times, I know I've done things just because I want to piss someone off or seem weird, and yeah, NE can definitely be used for that. And under intense stress, the grip of FE tries to shout emotion, rationalize, assess a bit about being logical, hypersensitive to others' opinions, prone to outbursts. Yeah, ITVs definitely have that outburst at least like once a year. I've definitely had it. It's been pretty bad sometimes. But yeah, that's level 1. Um, Level 2 is like social identification. Um, you'll get this nonconformist thing, but at least you'll be seeking out groups with similar interests. And this could be dangerous because I know some people, some I kind of look at I see a stereotypical nerd who like goes into their group and maybe the group doesn't really care about life and like you just stay there all the time. Your ego defense here, like to not grow, you might be guarded and pursue secret interests and hobbies. I've done that too. Like sometimes I'll say I want to try something and my friends make fun of me and I'll just be like, all right, screw you guys. I'm gonna do this on my own and not tell any of you because like you guys won't understand and like you're just gonna make fun of me anyway. Level three, um, yeah, you start to embrace your career problem solving, seeking ultimate truths, seek improvements. You can still be seen as some of the negative things like snobby, critical, sarcastic. You might procrastinate, but like you're developing your TI a little bit more for kind of better ways, even if your execution in with people isn't always that great. And ego defense, so ways that you won't grow is that you might be argumentative, you might not avoid taking advice to others. So yeah, that's one of the things. Like when you start trusting your TI more, sometimes you're just less likely to listen to others. I know a lot of INTPs, they'll trust themselves in the end, but like healthier ones will still take into account people's information instead of just saying no, this is BS. Um, and then you'll start to notice your F a little more at that point and see them as too involved, weak, and subjective. Yeah, J preferences, rushing into action. Yeah, I definitely see that. Like, I don't like talking to J's sometimes because they just seem to be like so sure of themselves in the moment. I'm like, dude, do you even think about this? At the same time, I hate it. Like my F, my or my P because it's like it doesn't seem as confident. All right, so determined action. So solution focused, inquisitive. Yeah, inquisitive is nice because like that kind of plays on your natural curiosity, but you're not being a dick about it. Non-domineering, tolerant, careful, fair, objective, rational. Okay, and yeah, starts to notice blind spots like poor attention to practical details, and sensitivity toward others' needs. That's probably a big one. That's probably your FE activating. Ego defense. You still remain an error of detachment and oblivious to how they impact others. So like I thought that my FE developed a bit, but I realized sometimes when I talk to people, yeah, like I'll just say mean things and not realize later that I rubbed someone the wrong way. And error of detachment, I definitely do that. Like especially when I get close to someone, but I'm scared. I'll just pretend like, oh, it's not a big deal that I know them or like that they're doing something like yeah, like whatever. Start to see some value in F and S preferences, as well as they don't go too far against own preferences. So yeah, this is starting to accept F and S, some limits, but it's still in a good direction. Um, your TI becomes more relaxed at level 5, and NE is more focused on time and workable solutions. I think that's when you actually start to implement like some NI and TE as well, because your NE like can be really in focus, like seeing everything at once. Obviously, that's not always like productive, but if you can start to actually do something with it, that'd be really nice. Yeah, FNS take time to enjoy the simple pleasures of life, like being in social interactions, being able to really be there. Um, Spend more time relating to others, better at encouraging people. Yep. And access to SI enjoys hand-on, detail-oriented stuff, reminiscing on past interests. So yeah, SI is seen as like you focus too much on your habits and your routine. In the good way, if you can use it to remember your past and learn from it, that's really good. Okay, and this is where I want to be: mental agility, make creative connections, and keen to share knowledge and with their unique perspective. I feel like this is the best way for INTPs to be social. Like they have so much valuable knowledge, and like their NE just allows them to say really insightful stuff. And if they can hone that the right way, like that'd be really good. Less need to defend their ego image of being intelligent and independent. Yes, INTPs are seen as to be very intelligent and independent, at least to themselves. And you have to start to break away from that. Like adding in more of your E stuff, especially FE and SE, like you can like rely more on others and be more interactive. Um, yeah, F and S are more attuned with the present. You can just be with people and more empathetic and willing to socialize and aware of vulnerabilities. And logic can't explain everything, so you can't use your TI for everything. And like I know I've been in so many parts of my life where like I use my TI. I'm like I can use my TI for this. I can use my TI for this. And sometimes it kind of works, but you're kind of stressed and you feel like you could do something better. This is why I'm trying to wear different hats, even in different parts of the day. It's kind of exhausting. It doesn't always work, but it's my own like thing. And I already went over 7, but realize your true to original thinking. A lot of your INTP preferences are driven by ego, and that's why you've been able to develop your strengths so far. But you have to be willing to let go of it, accepting differences and values of other perspectives, and incorporate all the 4 cognitive functions. That's mostly it. I want to go over this other link for a sec. This is more about emotion development, and there's a lot in here, but I'm going to go over just the ones for INTPs. So we rely heavily on your TI function, and we have a need to be intellectual free and independent. So I've already went over that. But then we also lack empathy and can be very harmfully self-centered. If we want the whole world to be logical, then it's at the expense of understanding the real complex reality of how people make decisions. And we feel like we understand people, but like we have to embrace that somehow. Like INTPs don't always make the most quote unquote logical decision because you're just trying to limit emotion from everything. And when things go wrong, like maybe you have emotional needs or you get lonely, like you're doing the same thing over and over again sometimes. And like as a rational person, you have to sometimes stop and say, hey, this isn't working, I had to try something else. um so yeah, things that can cause emotional flare-ups are sentimentality, emotional bias, perceived pressure, lack of emotional control, problems related to communicating well. um yeah, since we pride ourselves of being capable and control, anything that threatens this is going to cause issues or at least force some growth. There's some other ones. Let's see. I think there's one about your SI loop. Let me just find that. Yeah. So your SI loop. So we're prone to use our SI loop. Basically, it goes from TI to SI to SI to get stuck in past experiences and just justify going to new things. So we'll fantasize in what ifs, and rather than trying to actually really change and grow, and wondering why like your life doesn't go the way you want to. So you have to teach yourself the important lessons, um, but like use the past to like learn new things and not just stop trying. You don't have to repeat the past, which is always good, and you should try to go to like the better you. So stop fantasizing, because I know we always fantasize and get stuck in our heads, and look for more practical and tangible ways to improve your situation. And that's where like you're activating your other cognitive functions helps a lot. Like I'm really looking at like SI, T, and NI a lot. So like our what's it called, mirror or I don't know, like INTJs and ENTJs, they have like the same cognitive functions to us. They're just reverse extrovert and introverted. So they're TAE and NI. I think we could learn a lot from it. Um, so that was the other one, and then there was one. Actually, I think that's it. So hopefully hopefully this helps someone. I kind of ranted a bit, but after watching a lot of YouTube videos, I realized a lot of INTPs just ramble a lot. So hopefully, um, it's still enjoyable, and I'll put these Tumblr links in the description. Hopefully, this helps someone. All right, have a great day. Bye.